All right, let's take a look at running some network troubleshooting tools. They take a look at those. Definitely one of the things that you'll do in your career is deal with network trouble and helping people decipher that. So what I've done is I'm just here at prompt in Windows, and we're going to take a look at some tools and how they would be used. And so I'm going to give you an example of how they would be used. So the prompt is used a lot for troubleshooting networks because you can find this information in Windows, but you can't do anything about it. So if you were sitting at a PC that you went over to help somebody on, and they're like, hey, it doesn't get on the internet, I have no internet. You could go and look up and see if they've got an IP number, and you can do that all in Windows. But then you have to drop to the prompt to actually start really testing things. And so most network techs will just go to the prompt because you're going to end up there anyway. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't get special tools to do this, but you got to carry those around on a thumb drive. And sometimes you may not be able to install it on this one or that one. And so it's just best to use the prompts. All right, so one of these is ipconfig, and this is IF or interface config if you're on Unix or Linux. And apparently you got to actually spell it right. So that should work better. All right, so ipconfig displays quite a bit of information about what's going on. And this is not the full thing that I can do, but let's look at what we've got. You got to learn how to read this stuff, right? And a lot of people, they have trouble reading it because it's text, not like a picture in Windows. Right, and so right there at the top we have this is an Ethernet adapter, virtual box. So that's not actually my adapter. This one though says it's a wireless LAN adapter, right? So that one's got, but there's no connection there. And then there's wireless LAN connection 4 on this thing, and then there's wireless LAN adapter Wi-Fi. And that's got some information. So that's got a link local IP6 address. It's got an IP4 number being given to it, and that's very typical. Normally you're going to have a 6 these days and a 4. And then it's got the subnet mask and the default gateway. Now the default gateway on a network is the router. Now on large networks there's a lot of routers, and so you don't just say, oh, it's the router, right? Because there's tons of routers on those larger networks. But on a small network like your home, that's your router, that's your router. And so let's say that I am not getting on the internet. Well, what I just did with ipconfig shows me that I am getting IP information from someplace. So DHCP is working. I have a functioning IP address. Now from there, you can do a lot of different things. I always used something that would actually connect to the internet and then do some tests for me. And that is, oops, let me move my computer a little bit. I had to get a little setup there. I know you couldn't see what I was doing. I had to change something over on my iPad. All right, so I would use trace, or trace route is what that stands for. And so for me, I always approach it from, I want to see if I'm connecting any place. And that's what Tracer does. It's an application that will go through and try to get to whatever you tell it to. So I'm going to put .com. Now I could use an IP address. I could put trace route and then an IP address. But instead, I put in a name because that also did another test. That test my DNS settings. All right, so it says right here, I'm hitting the grid, and that's the name of the Wi-Fi. And then it hits Valley Telecom, 206 numbers there. And number 5 here usually times out for a minute and then continues. I always wonder what they're doing on their network that happens. But in any case, we'll let that go. That'll time out at least once. So you can see that traceroute takes a little while for it to complete. But this is telling me that I am getting out on the internet because I escaped my local network, which is the grid. I went to Valley Telecom, the VTC nets there, and now I've hit a 68.14252 number, right? And so I'm getting someplace. So if this was happening out there in the real, in the wild, I would go, huh, okay, so I'm actually getting out through our provider because Valley Telecom right there is my provider. So the problem is down the road someplace. In other words, it's out of my control, it's out of my network. Now, if it had died and I'd gotten these requests timed out on everything, you know, like I hit the grid and then said request timeout, request timeout, and that would tell me, oh, something's seriously wrong. Now, I told you that I actually could do a trace route to an IP number. So let's select that and copy. Oops, that was copy. See if that let me do that. Control, sorry. There we go. There's that IP number. So if I do tracer, I'm always spelling something wrong. 104, 106, 32, 41. Now this is hopping along routers is what it's doing. So there it is, doing the exact same thing for an IP number. You can do that. But yeah, it's hopping routers along the network out there, the internet. And it is very common to start to see something cancel out, request timed out, because some networks don't like you exploring them and they don't respond to trace routes. And so these days you'd probably want to try a couple of numbers, but as a network tech, you would know which ones do that. And you would say, okay, I'm going to trace route to Google, trace route to Yahoo or whatever. That'll work. So that's checking all the way through. And as I said, it's also checking the domain name system. So there is a command called nslookup. And nslookup is name server lookup or name service lookup. And you basically can say, hey, can you tell me who this is? And what it'll do is it'll go out and ask a DNS server who it is. And so what it's telling you here is the server is actually my router. So you notice it's 192.168.1.1. So that's my little wireless router. And it tells me right there, this is a non-authoritative answer, meaning this router is not the authority on who EAC is. But this is the information I have. And there it is, 206, 128, 67, and another number, 24, 117. Anyway. You can get an authoritative answer, but an authoritative answer means that you are talking to the name server that is responsible directly for whoever that is. A lot of problems can happen with this. For instance, right, we access the information on the internet through typing in www. That's what we do. We type in eac.edu. Well, if your name service lookup is down, if it's not working, then you won't get this answer. This will be blank. And then that means, oh, well, the internet probably is working just fine. But the problem is the name server is not working. Whoops, grab copy there. So I just wanted to show you, well, I'll show you that in a minute. So that's another one. Now, usually what they'll show you is you start with a P, right? So you go IP config, and if you do a /all, then you get everything. You get a ton of data. And so then you find out, you're right, I'm not looking for my Ethernet Bluetooth Bluetooth adapter. I'm not looking for that. So you got to know what you're looking for. I want my wireless LAN adapter. That's the one I want. Qualcomm right there. And it gives me the MAC address. See, there's the MAC. And it's also telling me that the DHCP is how it's getting its number. Didn't see that before. And that local link address is being given for IP6. And that this number is being handed to me from my router, right? And then there's my DHCP client ID, which when you get into it, you'll see that. So what I can do here then is I would say I'm going to ping my 192.168.1.1, and it responds. And so usually in these networking classes, that's what they teach is try to ping yourself, try to ping the router, then try to ping and you're heading out of your network, reaching out, which is good. You can do either one. What I wanted to show you is this is how these tools work. And knowing the components, what they're telling you about, knowing what they're doing, helps you understand what you're seeing on the screen. And so the things that I'm talking about here, well, you know, I would do a trace route and I want to see if this is dead or, you know, where it's dead. That's because I understand the components that they're referring to. And again, it's networking is a pretty heavy duty thing. You know, you've got Network Plus, which gets people really into networking, and then Cisco, which is all their switching and routing and how to program that stuff. You know, there's several certifications on that. Now, as I say that, and I talk about certifications, those things are often picked up along the way because you don't know necessarily right now if you like networking over server admin or over customer support or database administration. There's so many awesome places to go into that you really don't know what do I want. And so usually as you pick up these skills and you start working for places and you go, well, I really like this stuff, and then you get into that more. That's just the way it works. Just for fun, this actually deals with other stuff, but there is a NetStat, and that actually shows your active connections, who you're actually talking to. And I'm just going to stop it right there. And the port number that you're dealing with, so that number behind there is the port number that it's connecting on. So, because they do mention port numbers, and you'll deal with those a little more in the next class. But those are the port numbers that it's in there. So NetStat is really helpful, but it's usually used not as a network troubleshooting tool, but as a who in the heck is watching everything I do. Anyway, if you got questions on the different networking things in there, please, as I said, let me know, and I'll do some more. Right? I'll give you information just for you that gets into stuff much more, or information for everybody. You know, maybe I get a lot of questions on it. In any case, I love this stuff. This stuff is exciting. I really enjoy networking. So if you got questions, contact me.